Welcome to the video of our travels in Orkney with John and Sarah and Marian. There's
Hi
Marian.
there.
And we're standing at John O'Groats. You can see the bookshop there. And it's the day before Midsummer's Day. It's the 20th of June. Orkney is over there. And that's where we're heading in just a little while. And it's 14 degrees. And it's reasonably dry.
And it's not
And
raining.
And it's not raining, and we're looking
And
forward to
it's-
going.
Not windy either.
This is the harbour at John O'Groats, and in the distance you can see Orkney. And from here you can catch a passenger ferry that goes to Orkney. But we're going on the car ferry, and that's where we're going to next. John O'Groats is a popular place. New York 3,230 miles, Land's End 874 miles, Orkney 8 miles, and Shetland 152. And there's John and Sarah, and there's Marian. Nice to see the humour of some of these northern tribes. I understand that the Pentland Straits are some of the roughest that you could possibly hope to cross, but these ones look remarkably calm. We've come on a good day. So it's reversing in. Strange vessel. 2 hulls. You can see light underneath in the middle. I wonder what it'll be like crossing. Hope it's not like the Vomit Comet. Well, goodbye, John O'Groats. And we've learnt 1 or 2 interesting things about where we're staying. John, tell us a little bit about Scarpa Flow.
Well, Scarpa Flow, which out here, is one of the biggest harbours in the world. And in the Second World War and the First World War, it was used as the main harbour for all the warships of the Royal Navy. And this house was the communication centre in the Second World War. I think it was built especially, and they had a big radar station outside, and all the telephone lines from London and all around came into this house, and people would have sat here controlling all the warships and sending messages to them all. So it's very interesting. It's very quiet now, but in those days there would have been tens of thousands of people all around. Happily, there's just Grandpa and Granny, and me and Granny Scotland.
And we're very happy too. This is Scarpa Flow, where we're staying. This is where the German fleet was scuttled precisely 103 years ago. It was Midsummer's Day 2019. And we can see an amazing harbour and lovely scenery. This is taken from the front garden of the little property where John, Sarah, Marian and myself are staying. Kirkwall Harbour. Lots of flags. There's some sort of festival. I can see the Stars and Stripes many times. Not so many Union Jacks, however, but at least some. And in the harbour there are some huge, great sailing vessels. And one of these little scuttles going back to its cruise ship to pick some more up. And they look as if they could cope with any form of bad weather, don't they? It looks pretty unsinkable, doesn't it? Especially if they close the door. Gives you some indication of how rough the sea can be up here. It's the Kirkwall Hotel, which looks rather grand and rather imposing. Well, this must be a record. Here's Marian putting sun cream lotion on in Kirkwall in Orkney. Well, which of these flags could you identify? It's a bit like a Ukrainian one, but with a devil's pitchfork on it. I don't know where that comes from. Plenty of Union Jacks. It probably says something about which tourists come here. Well, this is Kirkwall High Street, or one of the shopping streets, and it's full of little shops, and it's busy, and it's really very much geared up for the tourist. All sorts of things that you can buy in here. Lovely to potter around. Well, here's a really rather posh jewellery shop, And isn't it interesting that a little island like Orkney with a fairly small population provides enough demand for a jewellery shop like this? An amazing little food shop, so full of character, but an off-licence as well. This is the rather imposing edifice of St Magnus Cathedral in Kirkwall, Church of Scotland. It looks very impressive. One of the interesting things about Kirkwall is the scale of many of the things that you see. And here we are at this St Magnus Cathedral, and it's a huge building, and you wonder, where do all the worshippers come from? St Magnus Cathedral took 300 years to build, but it was started in 1137. And you can see those amazing Norman arches. Very impressive, aren't they? Not Church of England, not even Anglican, but Church of Scotland. And so it's really not a cathedral at all. I don't know quite how the Presbyterians would see it, but it's a very magnificent building all the same. In memory of 833 officers and men of the HMS Royal Oak who lost their lives when the ship was sunk in Scapa Bay by U-47 on the 14th of October 1939. And there is the Book of Remembrance and the commemorative bell above it.
Here in the Book of Remembrance, which lists all the people who died on the ship. Here's one for ARW Card, and it says boy. He may have been just 14 years old. There were about 150 boy seamen on the ship when it was sunk.
During the Second World War, some Italians were involved in building this causeway. They were prisoners of war. But one of the very interesting things is that these Italian prisoners of war chose to build for themselves a little chapel, which evidently is quite remarkable, and this is where we've come to have a look at it. The Italian chapel, as you enter, an amazing relief of Jesus, the suffering Christ. The inside of a chapel built by Italian prisoners of war under the direction of Padre Gio Cicchetti, or something rather like that. This wonderfully ornate, beautifully decorated chapel made by Italian prisoners of war. These Italian craftsmen inspired each other and managed to construct this amazing chapel with all its intricate ironwork and painting. And it's quite a testimony to those Italian soldiers who accomplished this. This is Skara Brae. It's a settlement that was built in the Stone Age about 5,000 years ago. It's midsummer. The weather is about 14 degrees C and it's quite windy, and so I'm doing this as a voiceover because the original recording was barely audible with the amount of wind. But these settlements each had their own place for a fire, they had their inside toilets, they had places where you could sleep, and so life was surprisingly well organised. And here was quite a significant community of people who lived on this particular section of Orkney. The houses in Skara Brae were made of stone rather than of wood, and this was because so little wood was available. But one of the effects of it has been that the stone has made that these little settlements have survived until the present day. Remarkable, really. Midsummer, Orkney, Scale Beach. Time for a bit of sunbathing. Mid-June, not likely. Scale House, which is next to Skara Brae, and this is the place where the person who discovered Skara Brae in 1850 once lived. Scale House garden, very beautifully kept, very nice too. Dining room, very civilised living. Pretty round window, very bright, but the chair just in front of it is known as an Orkney chair. This is the library of Scale House. A beautiful garden at the back of the Orkney Museum, and very pretty it is too, right in the centre of Kirkwall. Well, in this garden in the middle of Kirkwall there are some very strange plants. Never seen anything like this with these funny cones. Stromness in Orkney with the harbour, and that's the mainland of Orkney, and to the right is the Isle of Hoy. We've come to the Brough of Bursay, hopefully to see some puffins, and although we looked hard, unfortunately we didn't actually see anything, but the coastline and environment is fascinating, so glad to have come. We're looking at Scapa Flow, and this is a wonderful natural harbour. But in 1939, one of the First World War battleships, the Royal Oak, was anchored, and in October 1939 a U-boat managed to escape through the British defences and with 3 torpedoes managed to sink the Royal Oak. There were something like 1,200 plus sailors on the Royal Oak, and 800 of them unfortunately and sadly were drowned, and this is a memorial to the Royal Oak, and it's quite a sad, salutary place to be, to think of that tragic disaster. This is the room where the memory of the soldiers who died on the HMS Royal Oak is, and it just reminds you of the tremendous feeling, even today, of those who gave up their lives in the Second World War. Some brave souls go swimming off the coast of Orkney. I hope it's warm enough for them. This is the Ring of Brodgar, somewhere in central Orkney, and it was built about 4,200 BC. And it's a ring and nobody quite knows what its purpose is. But the location is beautiful, and you get a wonderful vista of Orkney countryside. I'm hiding behind a particular stone because of the wind, and as soon as you move out of this stone you'll get a lot of wind noise, so that's why my recording is perhaps a little bit limited. The Stones of Stenness, about half a mile away from the Ring of Brodgar. This is a much smaller circle and far fewer stones left, but it's supposed to date from a similar period, around about 4,500 years ago. Well, it's nice to have Sarah with us. Sadly, it's our last day in Orkney. In fact, we're going home today. But perhaps, Sarah, you could tell us, whereabouts is Orkney?
Well, Orkney is right at the top of Scotland. That's not a very geographical term, but if you keep driving up and up and up towards the North Pole, you get to the end of Scotland. In fact, a place called John O'Groats. Everybody likes to go there, say they've been to that place. So that's Orkney. It's across the sea from there. You have to get on a boat and get across to the Orkney, which is not really the Orkney, because there's lots of Orkneys and lots of islands, aren't there?
And if you get to Orkney, is it something that would be of any interest to someone who might be, say, 10 years old?
Well, it depends on the 10-year-old, but there's lots of history, if you like history, and I do, and I did when I was 10 actually, because there were some very clever people who used to live here 5,000 years ago, and they used to build wonderful stone houses. Some of them you had to climb through a tunnel to get into. And they were very clever. Imagine that, 5,000 years ago.
What are the beaches like?
Lovely. Wonderful sandy beaches. Lots of lovely food. Very clean sea if you want to swim.
Chocolate sheep.
Chocolate sheep, yes, Jessie, just chocolate sheep. I took some pictures of them for them. Lots of nice shops. We were really surprised with that. Lovely shops.
Oh, well, thank you, Sarah. And we look forward to a holiday again sometime. Thanks very much.
Excellent.
This is the Castle of May, just a few miles from John O'Groats on the north coast of Scotland. And if it was clear, we'd be able to see Orkney from here. But that's the Castle of May itself. And this is where I understand the Queen Mother came regularly, and where Prince Charles comes from time to time. And she bought it for £1. Not bad value, eh? Gardens in the House of May. There's the Castle of May in the background, and it looks like blues and purples and other strange colours. Now, what does one grow on the North Scottish coast? Pretty gardens in Thurso, and plenty of churches.